in our feast, if you like, of legends, we have yet another legend to bring to the stage. Certainly a legend for me. Affectionately known as the father of Lara Croft, so I can imagine he's had an awful lot of emails of young lads asking for the hand in marriage of his daughter. But also, before that, was the founding father of interactive fiction, and I think that's an interesting aspect as we look at literacy and so on. So I'm not going to speak much more about this. I'm going to go hand straight over to our next speaker in the interest of time, Ian Livingstone, the co-founder of Eidos.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here, of course. Obviously, I'm going to concentrate on the gaming side of learning from the point of the skills required to make games. There's a huge shortage of maths and the cost of productions are rising in the UK, and we want to concentrate on that. But clearly, we want to change perceptions about games. So if you think about it, learning maths and physics at school has always not been a lot of fun. Some might say, so what? Fair point, except for the fact that there were 21% fewer maths entries at A-level in 2006 compared to 1991. Fewer students are going on to study maths and physics at university, yet for digital Britain to succeed, it's essential that more, not less, children study these subjects. Technology is changing the world, and people are changing too. A survey conducted in 2008 with 18 to 24-year-olds revealed that 75% of them would rather give up their TVs than their internet connection. People are bored of being passive receptors of information. We are living in an interactive world, and interactive entertainment is a far more compelling experience than passive entertainment. I recall in the 1980s when my own Fighting Fantasy game books, little plug here, I don't know if people actually read these things. They would look like normal books, but they were actually broke up into a number of paragraphs and empowered the readers to make choices. And the choice and consequence of their actions determined how these adventures would take place. So it would say something like you're walking down this horrible corridor, there's slime dripping down the walls, and there's rats scurrying across the floor, and you come to a doorway with the keep out sign written in blood. If you listen at the doorway, you hear a scratching sound. If you look further down the corridor, you see a green glow. What would you want to do? Do you want to open the door, in which case turn to paragraph 77? Or do you want to carry on walking down the corridor, turn to reference 207? So the reader made the choice. And at first, these books were criticized because there was an 8-page warning guide saying that they were the work of the devil, that the children were going to be interacting with ghouls and goblins, and they'd be terrible. A bored housewife in deeper suburbia phoned in to say that having read one of my books that her child had levitated. This is in fact great PR, because they thought, wow, for £1.25 I can fly, we'll have some of that, thank you very much. So, but over time, people in the establishment realized that these were actually quite good for reluctant readers. Suddenly they had to have a shorter attention span, they were actually empowered by being the central character of the books, and they were talking in the first person. It's all about their adventures. They weren't reading about somebody else's adventures. And they were encouraged for reluctant readers and for creative writing. So in the end, the establishment think these were a good thing. So, clearly interactive entertainment is more compelling experience than passive experience. So it's no surprise, really, that, video games followed on from that and became the preferred entertainment choice for today's youth. And, video games are an essential part of their lifestyle. Now, media consumption has changed dramatically, especially during the last decade. However, education, to my mind, has largely remained unchanged since the 19th century. Consequently, there's a huge disconnect between education and its students. From my experience, it's very evident that people, especially young people, are far more interested in something if they feel engaged or part of the experience. If children are so happy to be entertained by games, surely they would be equally happy to be educated by them. Today's children are simply turned off by outdated teaching methods. There is a great cost to society for those with literacy and numeracy difficulties, truancy, exclusion from school, reduced employment opportunities, increased health risks, and increased risks of involvement in crime. Research suggests that numeracy difficulties plays a distinctive role in restricting life's opportunities. Competent numeracy is not only important to employment and the economy, but also to a protective factor of maintaining social cohesion. So what's the solution for reluctant readers? Well, it's games, of course. Despite the propaganda from misinformed politicians and journalists, commercial games are a great learning tool as well as being entertaining. Players learn about solving puzzles and problems, choice and consequence, intuitive learning, narrative structure and social interaction. And the good thing is that players are learning by default because they are having fun. So, Nintendo DS is now used in many schools, but looking beyond games like Dr. Kawashima's brain training, where educational links are more obvious, it's possible to retrofit commercial games, like Derek was saying, to help create motivating context that would engage learners. Suitable games, used for short periods, capture a child's imagination and allow the teacher to use the context of the game to create a learning platform. Derek mentioned the use of Hotel Dust. There's also Viva Pinata, our own championship manager, where you learn about managing teams and an economic climate can help kids prepare themselves for the real life. I'm sure the majority of people in this audience understand the benefits of games playing in school. They include fostering an interest and an excitement in schoolwork, motivating learners to succeed and to continually improve, developing self-esteem, self-determination, and enhancing self-image, facilitating collaborative learning, implicitly developers learners' ability to observe, question, hypothesize, and generally get better at all things interactive. Now, that is the cause that we're doing, but what I'm concerned about is the perception of games. All the time we are criticized. You look at a child reading a book and you think, he's learning, he's wonderful. But when the first people watched people reading books, they wondered what were they doing? How could they be so obsessed in doing something so isolationist? What are they actually doing? But today, because we know what books offer, we think they are a great thing. You look at this character and everyone's immediately worried, what's he doing? Rather like they looked at children in the 16th century when they were first reading books. They were bemused and confused because they didn't understand the context of what reading a book was. The same with games today. People who are not informed of games, who haven't grown up with games, look at a guy with a controller in their hands and are completely worried that they're going to go down dark, dark avenues. If you'd seen, what would they have said about the cinema when it first came around? You look at these guys and you think they're all possessed by the devil. They're doing something strange. If you looked at them without knowing what a film was, you'd say, oh, they're mindlessly staring at a screen, they're eating popcorn, they have no value in society. We should ban films. But those of us, we know that there's more to life. There's a lot more learning and fun things going watching a film than just people theoretically looking like they're complete zombies. And as Derek was saying, you know, there's always the knee-jerk reaction about games. You put a controller in the hand of a child to demonstrate negativity. This is absolutely, completely wrong and infuriating. Why choose a controller? Why not burger and chips? Why not a book, even though we know it's learning? It's still a sedentary activity. The whole thing is all about parental responsibility. You've got to have a mix in a child's life, and games are a wonderful part of it. And yet, a few days later, you get a headline saying, actually, Wii is a great thing. This is from this week's Times. So last week, we have Change for Life complaints saying games are bad. A few days later, games are great. And then we get the Daily Mail or some other company saying, ban these evil games. Now, of course, we've brought a lot of this on ourselves in many respects, because way back in Nolan's time in the early 70s, games were a much more mass-market entertainment experience relative to what happened over time, because they were very simple. You saw everything on the screen like Pong. It was there, evident, everyone could consume it and play it. One simple rule, avoid missing ball for high score. We understood it immediately. And then over time, the arcades added a complication in that process by wanting to have more coins on the machine. So through extended play, they made the games more difficult and added levels. And so games became more complex. And then they introduced violence. And therefore, from being a mass market entertainment where 40% of the population were playing games, it went down to half of that. And then when the violence came in, it went down to 8%. Now, this was still a large market, and computer games companies are very happy to feed off this large niche, but it was a niche. These people with like £1,000 habit a year were sustaining a very large, viable games industry. However, it was niche, and it's not really until Nintendo's come back into making, with their innovative Wii and DS platforms to embrace the mass market again. And so this is a great thing. But we have actually been responsible for some of the games. But what has never ever said is that you can't judge the whole of the games industry on the back of one game. A game like Darren mentioned, like Manhunt, if you blame the whole of the ills of society on the back of Manhunt, it's like judging the whole of the film industry on the back of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We all know there's a lot more to it than that. You look at a film like Saving Private Ryan, everyone thinks, oh, well, you're understanding about World War II. You look at a game like Call of Duty, and people always say, oh, it's a terrible shoot-'em-up, and it should be banned. But we won't ban films, we will ban games. But over time, hopefully this will die out, as those who are actually in control of the media, who've probably never played a game, will all sort of die away, and those who've grown up with games will say it's a wonderful thing, and there'll be a new thing on their social calendars to worry them. And now we're saying, and this is a couple of days ago in the Times, that Britain should invent the next Wii. Well, of course we'd love to invent the next Wii. However, we have a shortage of mathematicians. We have a very reluctant investment community willing to back something like this because it costs an awful lot of money. It's a huge to make a hardware platform and launch it on a global scale costs billions, not millions of pounds. So, the Wii is also, it's a stroke of genius to come up with a motion controller. So these things don't happen easily, but they're suddenly saying that we're not doing this when we should be doing it. And yet, games can replicate everything in life. Again, in yesterday's Metro, Mummy, can I play a bypass surgery? Games can be used in a very positive sense to role play, to whether it's training pilots to fly jumbos, for operations, games can aid in that context. At the end of the day, for me, games are a wonderful thing. From learning, it's an art form, it's sociable, it's cultural, and it's, of course, economic. Games contribute 0.75 to UK GDP. Getting back to why do we play games? As animals, you see them in the jungle, they're sort of playing with each other, they learn by play. Babies, they learn by play. They're sort of mashing around the environment around them, and by interacting with that environment, they learn life's problems. So children play, youth play. Everybody's playing games now. It's now become a social activity, no longer the niche of the geek in the dark bedroom doing terrible things. Everybody's now playing. It's a joined-up gaming world. Grandparents are playing games with their grandchildren in the comfort of their own living room. But for those who don't know too much about the games industry, I'm just going to give you a little potted history. It's started way back when Steve Williams created on an oscilloscope this game called Space War, which was basically a game whereby two ships with limited fuels and limited weapons had to fly around and blast each other. It was never turned into anything commercial, and it was really thanks to our esteemed speaker, Nolan Bushnell, to actually turn the whole idea of games into a commercial success. And in 1972, he launched Pong to an amazingly wonderful reception. And one thing that taught me about games is that here's one white pixel moving across a black screen, which was compelling gameplay. And at the end of the day, it's gameplay that makes the experience the wonderful thing that it is. Technology, of course, brilliant. Graphics important, but at the end of the day, they just support the gameplay. Then the Japanese got on the act. They saw the success of these early games, and as usual, they innovate and make things better. And in 1978, Space Invaders came out. Such a success is that the Japanese Mint had to issue an emergency 100 yen coins because they're all stuck in the arcade machines. And little romantic recollection. We have no sound. The observant of you there will notice that actually Tomb Raider was launched in 1996, not 1995. I was on the radio the other day talking with this irate lady who was kind of trying to blame Tomb Raider for, violent society. She completely missed the point that about the wonderful aspects of games, and she was saying that Tomb Raider wasn't an educational tool. Well, it was not meant to be, but games can be used very much in education, but Tomb Raider was never set out to be an educational tool. The important thing, though, when people judge games is that they are no longer just a kid's thing. The average age of a PlayStation user is in their 20s. The important thing is that children, back in the 80s, were playing games, and they tend to like small furry creatures as their main characters. But these people didn't actually stop playing games, they just got older. And when, in the 90s, by the time Tomb Raider came out, what would they rather look at? A hedgehog, a plumber, or Lara Croft's bum? It was quite an obvious thing that mature content was around to be made and played by mature people. And that's another area where people misunderstand the games industry, is that there is something for everybody there. Not all books are for children, not all films are for children, and guess what? Not all games are for children. We carry our responsibilities in it with a robust rating system called PEGI, and some of our games that do have violent content are firmly rated at 18+, but mature content for mature users. So where we are today now, we've got huge platform diversity, lots of different consoles and handheld devices offering a wide variety of content diversity too. So there's something for young girls. Again, we were accused in the old days of just making games for guys making games for guys, which was true, but we're still a relatively new industry. It's only recently where the market has branched out, where it's males and females, young and old, are now playing games, that we have to offer content diversity. So a game like Pony Friends, where you're nurturing a pony, is a big hit with 11-year-old girls, and of course, Grand Theft Auto is going to have a completely different audience. But the thing is, it's a broad church of content available to a mass market. So if you look now, we have a huge online and offline market. We're moving from a niche to a mainstream audience, and we create blockbuster titles. And again, that really does go unnoticed. A game like Grand Theft Auto 4 launched last May. It sold over 6 million units in its first week. And that amounts to $500 million at retail. Now, that dwarfs any entertainment release in any other medium. Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, hello, Grand Theft Auto ate your lunch. Now, this shows the dynamics and the economics of games, but it always goes unnoticed. All people talk about in the media is how awful Grand Theft Auto is. It's actually a fantastic game. There might be parts of it that people don't like, but not everybody likes everything. And if you don't want to play it, don't play it. But it's an absolutely remarkable success story, both culturally, socially, and economically. We create important intellectual property as an industry. Lara Croft, there's been 2 movies, generated over $450 million at box office. We are actually calling the shots with studios. We license our IP to movie studios. It used to be the other way around. We are creating huge value, huge economic prosperity by creating wonderful intellectual property. And we get to call the shots. I remember when we licensed Tomb Raider to Hollywood, we managed to get a veto over the cast and the scripts, and when the producer said to us, we'd like Angelina Jolie to play the role of Lara Croft, we said, that's okay with us. I met her a couple of times on the set at Pinewood. I'm kind of still recovering from that experience. Anyway, we're getting, where was I? So there's a new audience playing games, as Derek went on about the wonder of brain training for old and young people to enjoy and improve their maths ability. But there are lots of challenges that faces the industry. If we fail in any way, we're in big trouble, because games used to be 2 blokes in a garage making a game for about £20,000. Today, for a game like Tomb Raider, we're talking 15 to 20 million pounds, teams of 150 people, taking 2 years to make these games. So you can't afford to get many of those wrong. We've got much more complex demographics playing. We have really complex technology, pervasive internet connectivity push games to evolve as communication and social platforms. Escalating costs. One thing, until the pound got whacked recently, we're the most expensive country in the world in which to make games. That brings its own problems. There was a mention before about tax subsidies. Now, we're looking for production tax credits from the Treasury, because places like Canada offer 37.5% production tax credit, a salary rebate for anybody working in games. There's also incentive for individuals to go there. They get a 1-year tax holiday on their earnings. In places like in France, there's a 20% cultural tax rebate for anybody now working games, which was come over from the film credits, and yet we have nothing here. We still have negative press. We have not much help from government, or we're beginning to engage, and we welcome Tom Watson's backing of our industry. It's brilliant, and we really thank him a lot for that. But a lot of it still is negative, and we're trying to change those perceptions all the time. The problems that we face as an industry is the lack of skills to make games. Making a film, thrilling though it is, it's a linear experience. So the skills made to make a game are, for my mind, a lot more a lot more difficult. It's like thrilling, but you can actually go where you like. So you have to build engines that display. So with a movie, it's the director's in control of reaction, and so you make this linear process, where if in a game, it's the players in control of the action. So you have to make endless possibilities for that player to enjoy the experience. So if you look at the component parts to make a game, the top line is all about moves and books, but at the bottom line, you've got all the additional things needed to make a game, from architecture, toy design, art, and mathematics and psychology. And these are just some of the skills that are required to make a game. This is a very complex process. And the problem is, our universities are just not delivering the students that we need. There are 81 universities in the UK offering computer games courses, and unfortunately, most of those are not fit for purpose. I'm also chair of the Computer Games Skills Council for Skillset, and there's only 5 actually being accredited. This is ridiculous. Most courses, unfortunately, offer a sort of generalist media studies course whereby they learn about the history of games, a little about design, the social context of Grand Theft Auto in our lives, blah-de-blah-de-blah. But can they make games? No. What we need is computer scientists, mathematicians, artists, animators, as well as designers. It's easier for us to go to somewhere like Imperial College, where they've not actually offered a games course, but we can hire the programmers who've learned C++ tomorrow. And so what we need is much more focused graduates coming out of universities, rather than those indulging in the niceties of learning about the social relevance of games. Skillset identified that 68% of people in our industry have to be graduates or postgraduates for the skills required to making games. And our industry endorsed their approach, and they set about analysing any university, and they targeted 165 courses that were capable of supplying us with games design courses. But as I just said a second ago, these are very generic courses where we need basic skills of maths for programmers and art for artists. So I'm pleased to say there has been some progress, but it takes a lot of time, a lot of lobbying, a lot of effort, because universities, as you all know, are funded on a quota system, the number of bums on seats. So it's easy for the universities to offer a generalist course to get those bums on seats. As soon as you say it's going to be maths-heavy programming, the students don't want to know. But somehow we have to get more people studying maths and physics, otherwise our industry is going to just kind of be wiped out, which is a tragedy, because we were one of the world leaders when Sir Clive Sinclair put foldable computers into the hands of this very creative nation. It's no surprise that we created blockbusters like Grand Theft Auto and Tomb Raider. We were very good at making games, and yet the skills required to make games are just not being taught in the quantities that we need. And from my mind, it's outrageous. So these are some of the courses that have been Skillset approved, and Derek will know how well Abertay've done. Not only do they offer great courses now, offering a centre of excellence, they partner with local industry. They have a very great, close relationship with Real-Time Worlds. It's no surprise Grand Theft Auto, made in Scotland, Real-Time Worlds in Dundee are going to be some of our leading examples of making great games. And it's a symbiotic relationship. The students get to see what's happening in the real world in the studios. The studios get students who can join them. They offer lectures in exchange for R&D and technology exchange. This should be happening everywhere. Universities linking with government, linking with local industry. It's going to make us back to be in our premier position. We've recently slipped from 3rd now to 4th in world development, behind Canada. Canada have achieved in 10 years what it's taken us 25 years to do, because they've got a wonderful supportive government who've actually encouraged companies to come to develop. In Montreal, for example, they've spent $500 million in enticing companies to set up, like Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, and ourselves. We'd rather set up in Manchester, but we have to go where the labour is cheap and the skills are high. Now, it's not just a handout from Canada. They've invested $500 million, but it's actually attracted $1.5 billion of inward investments from companies like EA, Ubisoft and ourselves to set up shop there. And they're also supplying these studios with highly trained graduates who can just slip into work. And it's just wonderful, the ecosystem that they've created there, because they've identified that the knowledge economy, the creative industries is the future as manufacturers in decline. And computer games is one of our most wonderful industries in this country, and yet we are slipping way behind. And for my mind, that's a tragedy. So there are benefits with what skill sets are offering, the recognition of courses and high caliber students for the games industry, and the clear cooperation between education and industry. And you know, workshops, masterclasses, and studio tours, and software, hardware, learning, work placements is great. And there's some of the companies that have been supporting it, not just the industry itself, but the trade bodies, Tiger, who represents developers, and Elsper, who represents the publishers. You know, not all games are bad. This is from the developers of Hitman. This is something not so violent. So we need parents to feel comfortable about children playing games and also learning through games. We need to inspire children and let them learn about the joys of mathematics. Let them learn through games. Let them know at an early age that if they study mathematics, They could be programming the next Tomb Raider or the next massive multiplayer game. For me, life is a game. I think it's the future of our country, and it's the future of education and entertainment. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Another good question.